Okay. You ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay. This is the meeting of the subcommittee to study the random audit program. Members of the subcommittee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Ethics and Government Act to avoid conflicts of interest in the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this subcommittee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or an appearance of conflict. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to those of you that are here today. I think at our last meeting, we had all kind of agreed that we did need to try to come up with some type of system where we were really going to be looking, instead of selecting districts to be audited, we were going to select individual trust accounts to be audited. And so we had left with asking that staff come up with a proposed policy and present that for our consideration. And I believe that's been done. And I don't know who wants to present that to us.
I'm happy to present it. I drafted this and reviewed it with Ann and Alice. We think it covers what we had discussed at the last meeting. And I'm happy to share it on the screen here if anybody wants to view it that way, or if you have your own materials, we can just review it separately.
I have my own, but Z, do you or Judge Bell need to see it up there on the screen?
I have my own. I
probably do.
Okay, let's just put it up, Peter.
Okay.
I appreciate you keeping it fairly simple. If you just want to.
Sure. So this the top of the document is just this basic policy of the state bar that our intent is to make sure that lawyers across the state have an equal possibility of being randomly selected for procedural audit in any given year. So the process is going to be the lawyers will be selected from a randomized list of all members of North Carolina State Bar. And a member being audited subjects that lawyers, all of the trust accounts associated with that law firm, to be audited, which is the current practice that we do now. And that a member cannot be selected for random audit more than once every 3 years, which is this standard policy and practice in the rule that we have now. So the first part of that is the part that's really changing, is to make sure that we're doing the selection from a list of all lawyers in the state, instead of it being selected based off of randomly selected judicial district numbers each quarter. The process is going to require Ann and I to collaborate in November, December of the year prior to run the random list of lawyers. The full list is going to be, the list that we create is going to have every active lawyer in the state on it. We probably are, the plan is to map out the first 200 to 240 lawyers on a map, so we can figure out a good geographic plan for the year to see what will work, how many weeks Ann would need to stay in certain areas, make sure that we can limit traveling distance and driving distance to a reasonable time for Ann in between audits, and then that really, once Ann and I meet at the end of in the fourth quarter and set the geographic plan, that sets in stone how many audits are going to be conducted in each judicial district for the year. So once we have that plan, we will know that we're going to be spending a week in District 8. So we're going to have 7 audits from District 8. And when Ann goes to contact lawyers, she takes the first 7 lawyers from District 8, that were part of this MAP plan. But if one of them does not have a trust account or is a government lawyer or something, then she will take the next lawyer on the list from District 8 to substitute for that exempt lawyer. That way we don't change the geographic plan every time someone who was originally selected does not have to have a trust, is not eligible for audit. So once we have it set in stone, those are the areas we're going to be going to, and we'll replace anybody who is not eligible for audit with someone else from that same judicial district. So we don't have to continue changing our maps and driving plans. We're still going to contact lawyers quarterly. And so we're not letting everybody know at the beginning of the year that they're going to be audited at some point during the year. It will still be quarterly. I don't believe there's any concern in terms of confidentiality or public record there, as the documents related to the random audit program have protections from being released as public records. Each quarter Ann will know where she's going, so she'll be able to contact the lawyers in the quarter prior to let them know and start scheduling those specific audits. If there's a place in the state where there's one or two lawyers were selected and randomly it is so far away from any other place that Ann's going to be auditing, or weather affects her ability to get to a certain area, this policy and procedure still allows for remote audits as necessary if something it's impractical, if something comes up or Ann's just we're unable to put into a driving plan and getting to a certain spot, we might be able, we'll have the ability to do a remote audit in certain circumstances, but the goal is that most audits are performed in person, that we're not building in a certain number of remote audits, but that if it is necessary, that we have the ability to do remote audits as Ann sees fit.
Okay. Judge Bell or Z, do you have any questions about this?
I don't have any questions. I read it and I have it, the policy in front of me.
And how many audits a year are you doing now? I don't remember. I know you've given us that information.
It's approximately 200.
So if you select 240 names, that's to kind of allow for the fact that, well, I guess you're saying you'll replace a name of anybody that's not eligible. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to try to map out. Yeah. We're going to try to map out more so that it allows for those ones that are exempt for some reason or don't have a trust account, and so that we avoid having to go back and remap it another time or more than once throughout the year.
And Peter, I guess you all thought through, because it seems like you could have done this process of looking to see if someone's going to be kicked off the list. You could do it right at the beginning after the names were drawn and then map the travel. But
it is something that we might be able to do in the future when we have a good combination of data to be able to be sure that someone doesn't have trust accounts. Right now, someone might not, there's a chance someone doesn't have an IOLTA account, which might be the data that we have, but they have other accounts that would be subject to audit when Ann is looking. And so if we can get to a point later where we can do our own verification of things on the front end, I think that we can pare the list down to those who are eligible before we do the selection.
Because that kind of works against a little bit of our total randomness.
That's right. By using the full list, we can really just, say and clearly say that we have done this completely random throughout the state. And I would say in terms of mapping things out, the reason that the policy says between 200 and 240 is we, instead of naming an exact amount, certain years it might be easier for Ann to do audits, and technology could change, or everything could change. Ann's circumstances, whoever the auditor's circumstances could change, where they might not be able to get think that they can do 240 a year or so. I think the goal to start this year would be, we're going to map, we're going to plan for doing 200 audits and see how this goes. And if this makes things easier and we can do more, then we will be able to increase it based off of this policy. We can do maybe next year, do 210. And if we see that this is actually making things a lot easier to conduct audits. And so,
which was my next question. Yeah. If approved in October, you think that you could implement this for next year?
I do. Yeah, I think so. When we did the test run, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ann.
I was to say we have to try it sometime, and yeah. I think first of the year is ideal at this point, if everybody's in agreement with the policy.
Well, that's why it's so wonderful that this is a policy. So this is not written in stone, and we can certainly come back to it. So I think I don't have any questions.
Barbara, this is Leonora. I had a question for Peter and Ann. Peter, when I had heard you describe the process of filling in someone, if someone cannot fit, when I read it, it made sense because I understood that you had 40 additional people to choose from. But since this is a random process, it's certainly possible that in your mapping, you map, let's say, 2 or 3 geographic regions for a period of time, and no one extra from those particular districts make up the 40 extra people you have. How did you all plan to handle it? And do you think we should specify that in a policy so that it's clear to the members as well how that situation will be treated?
I was going to clarify that. I think it was a misstatement. We're not going to over map. We're going to pick a number that is the number of audits we're going to do, and we're going to map that amount of audits. Then that sets the areas that we are going to in stone. And then when it's time, if we need to replace somebody from one of those locations, we're going to the master list and getting the next person that's on that list from that location.
So the randomized report is every lawyer.
That's right.
It's not just a 240 name.
That's
but
right.
You're going to just map the first.
Like I can tell you for next year, we'll map 200 we're going to map for 200 audits, 200 selections. Mm-hmm. And then when we start scheduling these things, if someone drops out, then that spot gets filled by the next person on that list from that district bar.
I'm a little bit confused now.
Okay.
I thought I understood, but I'm a little bit confused now. So how, in case you have to fill in someone, how is that person chosen? How is the fill-in chosen?
So let's do an example. So let's say we were going to do an audit. We did the original 200 on a map, and Ann and I made our plans, and that it determined that she's going to be spending a week in in Durham in that district, or 2 weeks. It'll probably be more like 2 or 3 weeks for Durham each year. And she takes, we have the list of lawyers that have it's been randomized. And so we have our first batch of lawyers that it's going to be 20 audits in Durham. We have that first batch of 20 lawyers from Durham. She starts going down that list. If she gets to someone in that 20 that is not subject to audit, then she goes to number 21, the next person from Durham that's on the randomized list for selection for audit, and replaces them with that. So we set in stone that we're doing 20 audits in Durham, and then we fill it with the first 20 lawyers that are eligible for audit from the Durham district. So you get that randomized you get randomization as it relates to geographic area because you set in stone the areas you're auditing right after the first selection. So it will end up with, 40 audits in Wake and 50 audits in Mecklenburg and 20 in Durham. You just don't know for sure right away which lawyers it will be because someone who was one of the originally selected might not actually be subject to audit, and you have to fill them in with the next person on the list.
If I could just add to that. So it's important to know that the original list, randomized list, will be of every active member of the state bar. So it won't just be at 240 people. It will be every active member of the state bar. The problem with then at the first of the year, or this would be in the fourth quarter, going through and calling all those people then is it then puts everybody on notice. And some of those folks we're not going to get to till the fourth quarter. And I think there's a problem with having people be on notice a significant period of time in advance of the actual audit because we don't know what they might do in the interim. So that's why we have to do it this way. But I think there's a lot of logic to it because if, you're 8 people in Durham County that were selected and 2 of those people don't have trust accounts, wouldn't be subject to audit. You then go back to your list and look for 2 more people from Durham. It's almost operating on the assumption that they're sort of fungible for each other because they're from that same district. I think you still get the same randomized effect of it without, giving people a lot of prior notice. Once we are able to actually store in our database accurate information, we can actually eliminate people at the get-go at the beginning, but we're just not there yet.
And this randomized list, that's going to reset each year, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, I understand.
And so there is a potential. So now every quarter, just 2 districts are randomly selected. So there is potential. So that makes 8 districts a year. So there's potential for me to actually go to more than those 8 districts.
Yes.
And that's where the mapping comes out because really to go one place or within a geographical, say an hour's drive or something like that for less than 5 or 6 audits really isn't feasible. So that's where I could, and I really do anticipate that I will be auditing in more district areas within a year.
Yeah.
Mhm. I do too.
And but
if
then
I could
by
say,
the same token, you could end up having multiple weeks where you're in Wake or Mecklenburg.
Mhm.
Yes.
The number of lawyers there. I mean, as opposed to what you would normally do, you could end up spending a month or 2 in just one location. You're allowed to come home for the weekends though, Ann.
Oh, thank you.
If I can say, I think this is a very elegant solution to the problem. I think we could look at every lawyer in the state and say, yeah, you got a 1 in 30,000 shot of being drawn in any calendar year. And I think that's as random gets. So I think that is very, very good solution for the problem.
I agree. I think it's obviously I don't have a trust account anymore. Praise the Lord. But I think it is I really sympathize with lawyers from smaller districts when they felt like we were picking on them. I don't think we were trying to pick on them, but I think they were right. They were being picked on. And so I think it addresses that problem.
I think it's great.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about next steps. I don't think we need to change anything in this. I would like us to get, whether it's an email back from the other committee members or something, letting us know if nobody has a concern. I don't think we necessarily need to meet.
I agree. I think we just send them a note saying, the people who are on the meeting think the policy's fine. We would obviously want your input. Please let us know with email saying, yes, it's fine as is, or no, I want to talk about some changes so we know whether we need to have a meeting. If you tell us, yes, it's fine, it is our presumption that means we can forward it to issues committee with the approval of the subcommittee.
Mhm.
So that they're clear what they're saying yes means.
And Barbara, I would put this in I can put this in a couple page report where we, recap what the subcommittee did and the actions of the subcommittee and then what the proposal is. And that can be something that we can present to the issues committee and ultimately through to the executive committee if they agree.
Okay. My only other question is sort of follow up, because whether we keep this subcommittee in place, and maybe it's up to the issues or something else to decide, I would love to kind of have somebody that you report back to about, whether it's first quarter next year when you've done your initial list and what you come up with, or maybe it's at the end of next year, but at some point where we're following up and saying, it looked good in theory, was it workable?
Yeah, that could be a recommendation from this committee that we report back to a meeting of the issues committee at some point next year with a status update on how things are worked. So it doesn't necessarily have to be to this subcommittee.
Right.
Subcommittee could end, but it could be report back to the full issues committee.
Judge Balensy, does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I would like you to add that in, Peter.
Okay.
Anybody else on the call have any questions or comments? Okay. And again, if some of our other committee members have questions, I think we could have a relatively short call and discuss it, assuming we could get everybody together. So. Or find 10 minutes to squeeze them in before the issues meeting, but okay. If there is no further business, then I think we could adjourn.
Well, I'd like to thank Ann and Peter for coming up with this solution, and also to commend Barbara on the efficiency with which this committee has done its business. Very impressive.
Well, we will see. The proof will be in the pudding, isn't that what they say? So, like I said, this looks good in theory. I hope it'll be very interesting to see what our first random list looks like.
Yeah, I think Ann's gonna have some challenges in the geographic piece of it, making that work. But
Yeah.
we'll work with her to try to
Yeah.
make that as fluid as possible for her and not create a lot of stress and in terms of her travels.
That's what I mean. We'll just have to see. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the drawing board, literally. So,
There we go.
all right.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your service, as Catherine said. Great.
I feel like this was one of the most effective subcommittees we've ever had, where we actually have a tangible solution to something. Feels good.
It's very impressive.
Hope everyone has a great week.
You
All
too.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Peter.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Peter, do we have further business? Oh,
No, I don't think so. No, I'll need to send an email to let me come chat with you and see if we can't figure out who we need to talk to and do some things like that.
sounds
Catherine, if you want to come up and chat too, that'd be great. Okay.
Z, if you want to